first verse, the word of the Lord came to Jonah the son of Amittai, saying, "Arise, wake up, Jonah, and go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up against me." The next verse, what does it say? But Jonah fled from the presence of God. Jonah fled from the presence of God. The prophet of Israel, whom God has chosen to be a spokesman to people, to turn away many people who are walking away from God back to their right ways. This prophet of God is disobeying God and walking away, running away. Where God called him to Nineveh, he is running to Tarshish. Let me tell you how that looks like. If this is Dallas City in the center, and Garland City is over at the east, and Arlington is over at the west, that's exactly where Jonah, instead of going to Garland, he took the exact opposite road. Instead of going east to Nineveh, he went west to Tarshish, a complete opposite disobedience. Complete opposite disobedience. You know why? Why? Why did Jonah run away to an opposite direction? Because Nineveh was the capital city of Assyria, who were their enemies. Israel's worst enemies were Nineveh, the people of Nineveh, the great city. And they were a little jealous too, because they were a great city than Jerusalem. And Jonah didn't want to go there. He ran away. Let's read. But Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa, found a ship, and went down into it with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. I remember a few months ago speaking about Samson and saw how he went down. Here's another prophet who went down to Joppa, down to the ship, and from there down to go asleep, to fall asleep. And he's sleeping. He's sleeping. A prophet called by God is now sleeping. You have a ministry, Jonah. You are called by God. You are called to turn many people away from their sinful ways, but you are running away from not just the people of Nineveh, but from the presence of God. When God gives us a mission, when God gives us abilities and talents, and we are running away from our mission, we are not just running away from our mission, but we are running away from the presence of God, and we are going down and down and down and down and down and going asleep and falling asleep. Verse 4. Then the Lord hurled a storm. It's not just caused a storm to happen, it says hurled. Hurled. Caused with deep intensity. It started slamming, the waves started slamming towards the boat, so much so that the boat started to break. That's what it says. And the sailors here are throwing away the cargo so that the boat will be lightened. But what is Jonah doing? The Lord heard a great storm, and Jonah is fast asleep. They say that the lower deck of the ship is the most comfortable place to be. It doesn't sway a lot. When we run away from the presence of God and be very comfortable, the minimum that we can be as Christians is come on a Sunday morning, pay our tithes and offerings, go back home. No devil in hell will bother you. The bare minimum. And we can spend the rest of the week sound asleep under a boat. The storm is hitting on the boat. And the sailors are now, verse 5, the sailors became afraid, and every man cried to his own God. Even the sailors, even the pagan sailors who did not know Yahweh, who has not been called by Yahweh to do any kind of mission, is crying out to God, to their own God, as they know. Whatever God they knew, they were crying out, but Jonah is still sleeping. We see in the next verse, verse 6, now the captain of the ship came to Jonah and saw this man sleeping. And he called, Jonah, arise. I'm sure Jonah was surprised because the last time he heard it was from God. Arise. Jonah, arise. He arose. Even the sailors who are pagans called on God. Even the captain is asking Jonah, Jonah, wake up and call on God. Maybe your God can save us. Jonah is sleeping. God commissioned Jonah. He ran away from the presence of God. But we see people who do not even know God calling on God. We have a big problem here. We have a big problem here. The problem is found in verse 9. Paul is saying, I am a Hebrew. We not only see pride, but we also see disobedience entangled with it. I am a Hebrew. When I say that I am something, that is the end of whatever you're called to do. When I am too good to be something, when I am too good to go for a mission, when I am too good to obey God, I'm being so proudful. I am wearing a good suit. I cannot worship God this morning because what if it tears? I am somebody who is a doctoral student at a prestigious university. How can I worship God? How can I sweat? I am a Hebrew, says Jonah. And you know what the sailors and captain answered? We don't care who you are. We are in the midst of a stormy situation. Tell us what you did wrong. We don't care who you are. Finally, he was thrown off the boat and God commanded a fish to swallow Jonah. And you know what did the fish do? Fish didn't go the opposite direction. It obeyed God. Even the fish who swallowed Jonah obeyed God. The sailors, the captain, the fish obeys God, but the prophet who is called by God is fleeing away and away and away. Jonah's heart is full of pride and full of disobedience that he cannot submit to the will of God. The will of God will only take you where the grace of God will cover you. The will of God, if God's will for you is to do something, the grace of God will cover you. Jonah was swallowed. And there in the belly of the fish, he cried out, Lord, save me. Now I know I'm a mistaken person. I didn't do your mission. And God commanded the fish to swallow, to spit out, to vomit Jonah again back at the shore. When I read that portion, the end of chapter 2, I thought, game over. That's the end of Jonah's ministry. If I were God, I wouldn't call him. I would call somebody else for the ministry. But look at chapter 3 and verse 1. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time. The second time. There are preachers preaching that the Old Testament God is different from the New Testament God. We don't need the Old Testament here.